Hello, everybody. Logging on here, just checking out a few things. Getting set up here for today's live training. There we go. There's my chat box. There's Nick. Hey, Nick.
For some reason, it's setting up the audio at the same time. Stop. There you go. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Good. Can you see me as well?
I can see you as well. How you doing, man?
I'm fine.
Good. You know, we're matching today. If you look at this, I'm not sure if you can see it or not. My pants.
Ah, see?
Camo.
Yeah, now we're talking.
Yeah, camo and camo.
Yeah, got a camo front trousers on. That's what
That's good.
So how are things?
Good. Pretty good. Pretty good. I've been thinking a lot about your boat.
Yeah, so is Neo, to be honest. So yeah, it's going to be good. I went over there and had a look at the boat with him.
Right.
And he was quite excited about it.
How you doing, Saba? Thanks for joining us today. We're just kind of doing a little pre-game warm up here, a little chat. We're just kind of hanging out before the live training starts. Okay. So if you have questions throughout, just go ahead and queue those up in the chat box, and I'll keep an eye on them while Nick does his thing. And at the end of it, we'll address all the questions together. All right. Where are you from, Saba? Is it Saba? Hopefully I'm saying that correct. Hello. Yes. Awesome. Great. Where are you from? Where are you dialing in from today? Spain. Very cool. Very, very cool. Is it Benavides? Benavides? Welcome? Is that what it is? Hopefully that's correct. Now we're just kidding up. Nick and I, Nick's in Copenhagen, and I'm in St. Louis, Missouri, right in the middle of the United States. And it's funny, he hopped on, he had camouflage pants, like shorts on, and I do too. It's just completely random.
Is that what?
I'm just telling the story, but in case he like jumped in halfway in between.
Yeah, that would be a bit weird.
Yeah. Because I was standing up showing Nick my shorts. So if you jumped in right then, that would be awfully strange.
That would be
yeah.
Awkward.
So, Saba, tell me a little bit about what types of production that you create. Today's going to be a broadcaster-based live training, so it'd be great to know, what type of institution or organization that you work with. No, great podcast. Okay, that's very cool. And no, don't apologize for your English. My Spanish is horrific, so it's. What kind of podcast do you create? What's the topic? And is it just you with the podcast, or do you have like multiple people on your team? Developing apps. Okay.
What kind of apps do you develop for podcasters?
Did you get a haircut?
Me?
Yeah.
No, not really.
Really?
longer.
It looks shorter. Maybe do you put some gel in it? Maybe you got some sun. I don't know.
Actually, I just fell asleep on it. That might be it.
So Saba, you can see we're kind of loosey goosey. We have fun with the training, so it's.
I'm going to be self-conscious. It's going to be
jeez,
my hair all through the webinar. Are we recording this?
We are recording this.
Oh, that's unfortunate.
That's all right. I went with the full-on surfer dude today, so you're cool. It's all good.
Yeah, you're looking great. Like the Hawaii shirt.
Funny story behind this shirt, and we're going to start in 2 minutes, Saba. All right. So is the funny story behind this shirt, it's my dad's shirt from like 40 years ago. Like he kept it away in a closet someplace, and he never put it back on. And I found it. And yeah, so.
It's very modern.
Yeah. Okay, let's wind this down.
That's why I'm saying that. I have no idea what modern would be. Absolutely no idea. Yeah. Let's just assume that you look modern.
Okay. All right. So I was mentioning to Nick earlier throughout the course, I'll be holding up little time cards.
Okay.
To let us know how much time we have left. That way we can keep things moving along. And Dirk, thanks for joining us, Dirk. Let's see here.
It's probably no, we should probably just stick to the plan. But yeah. Mind you, going through the broadcaster things, they might be interesting also for podcasting.
Okay. Right. Just Dirk, because you're joining us here, it looks like you might be joining us from a line here. We'll be starting the live training in here in about a minute, but it's going to be a broadcaster-based live training. If you have questions, queue them up via the chat, and what I'll do is I'll address those and keep an eye on those throughout the course of the live training, and we'll address everything at the end. Okay? But definitely appreciate you for being here. And just to recap, today's live training is going to be about Hindenburg Broadcaster, and the purpose of it is just really to show you how Broadcaster works and to demonstrate the tools and workflows that make the process of audio journalism dramatically easier for station managers and for talent. Okay. And so Nick, I'll let you take it away and we'll hit those topics.
Right. And so we'll just try to address a few of them. Just wondering where to start. We could start with the voice profiler. I'm just going to share my screen with everyone because I fear that we might be diving into the deep end if we just start with some of the more geeky stuff. So anyway, how do I share my screen? Do you remember how to share your screen?
Yes, okay. right in the middle of the screen. Yes. There it is. Just the bottom.
Okay. So we'll get back to this one in a second.
Sure. Let me ask you a question, Nick, real quick.
Okay.
Why is Broadcaster, it's more beneficial in terms of audio journalism? What separates it from everything else?
Well, really, the reason why Broadcaster is interesting for a broadcast station, radio station, and this is really not for podcasting, but for broadcasting, is that more and more radio stations are dealing with journalists that are producing their own material, and which is fine, but it can be difficult to actually produce your material and uphold some of the standards that the broadcast station requires, like having a consistent EQ through all your pieces and having consistent levels and uploading to specific exports. Actually, these are some of the same problems that podcasters also have. But when we started out, we were addressing this for radio. And so that's basically why a broadcaster is tailored for broadcast use. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
Okay. And so the problem is actually twofold. If you are looking at it from a radio station's point of view, you have the journalist that just wants a tool that's easy to use. So, something that's easy to understand, and what you see is what you get. But on the other hand, the radio manager or the chief engineer would need something that has some specific tools, like how do you sound. So in this case, we have a piece of audio that has hasn't been processed in, no, wait a minute, that's actually not true. Hasn't been processed. Right, what I'm going to talk about now, I have to start from the beginning, is EQing. Now, typically speaking, when we talk about EQing, you just apply an equalizer like this, and then you can adjust your equalization. And the way that it works is an EQ is just adding or removing annoying parts of the sound.
They launched a website called One Frame of Fame.
So we could emphasize a part of the sound by turning up the EQ like this.
On the site, you're presented with one frame from the video. You mimic the pose in the frame, take a shot with your webcam, and then upload the picture.
So this is basically how you use an EQ typically, and then you just go in and remove annoying areas or add something that you want, like some brilliance in the mix. The problem with that, well, there is not a problem with that. If you have a decent studio at home, you can do that, and that's fine. The only problem is that if you're working from a laptop or using headphones or something like that, this is not going to work, because you don't have a controlled environment where you can do an EQ. You can make something sound good in your headphones, but that's not going to necessarily going to sound good anywhere else than inside your headphones. So you want a controlled environment. So what we came up with for that one is the voice profiler. And the point of the voice profiler is you have a piece of audio like this one that's actually been produced by the radio station. So this could be the sound engineer or the manager from the radio stations approving this is what he wants you to sound like.
Launched a website called One Frame of Fame.
In this case, it's Clark. So from that, you can just learn a profile. And this is not learning a specific EQ. This is creating an FFT of the actual sound. And you can just think of it as it's creating a snapshot of your ideal sound. Now, the next time you want to use that.
So they launched a website called One Frame of Fame.
In this, I hope you can hear some of the audio. This is then a new piece of audio that you've just recorded, and you're not quite sure how it sounds. And what you can just do is apply that profile that you just created. This one was for Clark. And now it's automatically created an EQ. What we were doing before is now created from the point of view that we know what you want to sound like. This is the white one here, and this is what you sound like right now. And now we're creating an EQ. All that is quite geeky. You don't actually need to know that. All you need to do is just apply it and listen to it.
So they launched a website called One Frame of Fame.
So now we have the sound that the station actually wanted. So the station's happy. You're happy because it only took you about 1 second to do it. So voice profiling, it's something that's going to make you happy if you got it.
Sure. And let me just jump in real quick just to point out, I mean, the idea is always to have consistent sound day in, day out, right? Because sometimes you don't sound very good. Sometimes you might sound nasally. Sometimes you might be sick. And then what happens is if you can dial in your voice just the way you like it, just the way your station likes it, and wouldn't it be great to be able to produce that sound every single day without having to like fidget with dials and whatever else? That it just allows you to, spend time telling your story. That's the purpose behind it, and keep everything simple. So that's what makes voice profilers so powerful.
It really does. And it's really, I know this is not really a point that we were supposed to be covering, but it's the same idea with auto levels. The whole point is that, let's see, if we now just drag any piece of audio in here, the auto level will, hopefully, what's it doing? It's decoding right now. So it's going to decode it, create a WAV file, and it's going to automatically set the levels. I haven't touched anything up until this point. And again, setting correct levels can be a bit tricky. How do you set levels on a specific piece of music compared to another piece of music compared to some narration? All this is being done automatically in the system. So all you need to do as a producer is think about creating the story and not leveling. We're not going to go too much into levels in this tutorial. It's more about broadcast features.
But just to recap on that real quick, though, and that's important because what happens is sometimes when we make recordings, sometimes we're really hot as far as our loudness is just we're really loud, or we're like very close to the mic. Sometimes we're a little further from the mic. And what we're able to do, again, it's automatically set these levels for you at industry standards without you having to fuss with it.
Right. Okay, this is going to be a bit geeky, but if you come from a radio background, you will understand the problem. Now, what I've tried to do here is recreate what a telephone interview could look like. A telephone interview is typically 2 tracks. You have your questions on one track and you have the answers on another track, which is fine. You can do that. You can set that up in Hindenburg. You can create 2 separate tracks and you can record it. That is not what we're going to have a look at. What we are going to have a look at is something called Smart Insert. And the problem being that what often happens is that someone actually starts talking at the same time as someone else is answering. And then you have the problem that 2 people are saying something at the same time. Now, to edit your way out of that can be a bit tricky. Then you have to split things up, and then you have to try to move them around, and you go like that, and you have to ungroup it, and so on and so forth. So it gets a bit messy. So we were thinking maybe there's an easier way of doing it. So we've come up with something which is called Smart Insert, where you just basically highlight the area that's overlapping and use a shortcut called Shift Control right arrow if you're on Windows, or Shift Command right arrow. And now it's going to do an insert, which is, I don't know if you can see it, but this space here is now moved over here on this track. So it's out of sync, so to speak. So you have one insert on one track and one insert on the other track. So the amount of space that we inserted is being inserted from the in point on one track and from the out point on the other. Now, the point of it is we now have an edit where you can hear it
kind of music.
Ackerman says that
where they're not overlapping anymore, and it's still everything else is kept in sync, which is the whole point. Did that make any sense? We can try to do it again.
Simone and Kipsky put a lot of that humor.
So here we have overlapping audio. I'm just going to highlight that. So now it's no longer overlapping.
One of the goals.
Simone and Kipsky put a lot of that humor into their music.
You're looking confused, Jack. So,
I'm looking for my window. My window just kind of vanished here. Sorry about that. Didn't mean to distract you. Sorry.
But this is, if you are doing phone interviews, and you're doing a lot of these on radio, this is a very typical problem that you have when editing. mind you, it's only a problem that you have with phone interviews. You don't usually have this problem with anything else. So it's a nice trick to know. It's called Insert Special, and the shortcut is on Mac, Shift Command right arrow. But you have to keep in mind that the tracks need to be linked. And yeah, that's it. It's very simple to use. I'm trying to do another one, just for the sake of it. There's not much of an overlap here, but we can just do it anyway. Like so. There you go. So, should we just have a look at the list of things to do? Faster than live. Again, this is not going to be that useful if you're not doing radio. Faster than live is something that we came up with for a radio station that was doing on the hour news. And let me show you how that works. So I'm just going to import some clips. Into my clipboard. And just call these clips for the news. So just imagine now that these are the small news segments that I want to go on top of the hour. Okay, so they could be talking about, I don't know, whatever news is related in clips we have. Actualities, they would call them in the US. So what I want to do now is I want to record my voice and then insert the actualities. So the way to do that is I can arm the track, so I'm now ready to record. I can just record myself saying, this is me now on the top of the hour, welcome to the news. And then I can press Alt-1. That will trigger this clipboard here, the Alt-1.
We used to go skateboarding, and then when we got time to make samples, sort of.
And what it will do is it will insert the clip where I wanted it inserted, play the first few seconds of it and play the last few seconds of that clip, and then continue recording. And just do that again. I'm just going to insert the next clip.
That kind of evolved into hip-hop kind of music.
So I can hear, while I'm doing the recording, the beginning and the end of the segment. I can adjust the beginning and the end any way I like. And then it will just continue recording. So if these clips were a bit longer, I can actually record the news in a shorter amount of time than it actually takes to run for the whole news segment. So if I have a 5-minute news segment, I can record that in maybe 2 or 3 minutes. So if you're a busy radio station, that is worthwhile. I'll just do it one more time. Alt-1.
I think there's a pretty big sense of youth. That's one of the goals.
And then we're continuing recording. It's called Faster Than Live. And it will save you a huge amount of time.
When you press Alt-1, Nick, does it insert the next clip automatically?
Yes.
And can you, sorry,
okay, you won.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, can you play the whole entire thing from beginning to the end, just so we can hear what it sounds like, the finished product there?
That would sound really weird because I was just
right. It's okay. I mean, it's just to, you know.
I guess could do. That will trigger this clipboard here, not one.
We used to go skateboarding, and then when we got tired, we'd just spend hours pressing pause buttons on cassette decks and trying to make samples, sort of.
And what it will do is it will, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever, but it's, but it's kind of the point. And this function here is being used in day-to-day productions at large radio stations. So it really does work. It's a time saver. And that's the thing about radio contra podcasts. In radio, you always have a deadline, and you always basically you're running out of time somehow or other. So you want to optimize your workflow. With podcasting, it's not so much a problem because usually you don't have a deadline like within the next 10 seconds. It's more flexible than that. Okay, what was some of the other things we're going to be talking about? So we've got the voice profiler, faster than live. Which one should we do now? Time stretch. That's fun. We'll do some of the export things at the end. Now, time stretch. It is what it says on the box. We can stretch the amount of the length of the clip. That's in essence what it's all about. It's usually a problem that you have, well, if you're doing jingles and teasers and that kind of thing, where you want a narration, you want to have a specific narration fit into a specific amount of time in the music. So let's say in this case here,
Ackerman says the band's music mixes the layered beats popular with his childhood favorites, Public Enemy, with guitars, drums, and keyboards.
Now the problem I have is that he's just chatting along and I want him to end here at this point where the music starts. So what I can do is just hold down Alt Command on Mac or Alt Control on Windows, and in real time now just make the clip here shorter. There we go, like so. So now it should actually fit with the music, so we can have a listen to it again.
Ackerman says the band's music mixes the layered beats popular with his childhood favorites, Public Enemy, with guitars, drums, keyboards, even sitar.
And this way we have fit the narration to the music. Now, obviously, there are some limits to how much we can stretch this without it sounding weird, but just don't do it more than about 7 or 8% and you're going to be fine. But it's a really, really useful tool, and compared to other systems that obviously also have time stretch, in here it's real time. We don't have to go in and process this. If you want to change it, we just add a little bit more. So working with it is really, really simple, and we can just we can also undo it. And if you want to go back to the original, we just hold down Alt and Command and just double click on the end, and we'll go back to the original audio. So it's all non-destructive, and you will not find that in any other systems, not as far as I know at least. If you do, please tell me. So time stretch, it's really easy to use. There you go.
Nick, does that distort the sound of someone's voice when you stretch it out or bring it back in?
It obviously will distort it somehow, but we're trying to not distort it. So there's quite a few different algorithms going on in the background, trying to remove some of the areas that are not that necessary. So we're just trying to compress it. But it shouldn't, if you keep it within limits, well, we can just have a listen to it. Let's go back to the original. This is what the original sounds like.
Ackerman says the band's music mixes the layered beats popular with his childhood favorites, Public Enemy, with guitars, drums, keyboards, even sitars.
Okay, so it's just a little bit too long here. So we're just going to make that a little bit shorter, like so. Let's have a listen again.
Ackerman says the band's music mixes the layered beats popular with his childhood favorites, Public Enemy, with guitars, drums, keyboards, even sitars.
It's not really distorted in any way. Obviously it's speeded up because that's what we did. But it's not distorted. We don't pitch it or anything like that. Any other questions for time stretch? No? Easy. Okay, so what else do we have on I? One click publish. We should do that at the end so that we can do that. Let's be able to talk about that. Import from Pro Tools. Okay, so importing from Pro Tools. We sometimes are in a situation where we need to import a session that has been created in Pro Tools. So the way to do that is pretty straightforward. You find your Pro Tools session, which is here, and down here on what you're able to import, we're now going to select the PTX and PTF files. And now we can actually see the Pro Tools session. And that's really all we need to do. Just open that, and there you go. That's your Pro Tools session. I can't think of any way of making that any longer. It is really that simple.
Yeah, I didn't want to state the obvious, but hey, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. It's pretty straightforward. Okay, and we can go the other way around as well. That's a bit more difficult to show because I actually don't have Pro Tools on this, but I can show how it's done.
Why would someone want to bring a project in from Pro Tools?
If you've been working previously on Pro Tools and you've switched to Hindenburg, you might have some archived material in the Pro Tools format that you want to continue working on, and you can do that. That's one reason. Another reason could be that you're collaborating with someone who's actually working on Pro Tools, and so you can just open their session and continue working on it.
And then all of the features that Hindenburg provides is available for a session that's been imported in Pro Tools, like voice profile or whatnot.
Sure, it'll just be converted to a Hindenburg session. You could also go the other way around. You could have a session like this that has already been created in Hindenburg, and you want to save that as something that can be read by Pro Tools. And the way to do that is you use Save As. And then instead of having the format being NHSX, which is our own native format, then you can use the AAF format. And this AAF files here, if you choose that, that is being optimized for Pro Tools. So now we can, yeah, let's put it there. So it's going to create a new session, which has the extension AAF. And this could be then imported into Pro Tools. Again, there's not really a longer version of that story. I could do it slightly longer by saying we also have a different one. If we do the Save As again, someone might have noticed we have this one called AES31. That is, again, a different export format. And these two are really just EDL formats that describe in the same way that we actually describe. So what an editing system really does, a non-destructive editing system is, we're not actually messing around with the audio. When we move something around, we're just saying, this piece of audio here, which is on your hard disk, play that from this point and stop playing it at this point. And if there's a fade on it, add a fade to it while you're playing. So the EDL, as you call it, the edit decision list, is just basically saying, this is what we want you to do to the audio. So it's basically just a text file doing that. And then it refers to some audio files. And so when we are creating, let's go back to this one, Save As. This AES31 file, this is just a different way of describing it, this EDL list that can be read by different systems. And in this case, we made the AES31 so you could import your sessions into Wavelab, which is typically used by the Australians, well, at ABC at least. So if you're using Wavelab, if you are at ABC, there you go. That's your solution. If you want to collaborate with someone who's using Pro Tools, this is typically what you will find on an NPR radio station. Then just save as an AEF and just send that file to the station manager at the radio station, they can import that into their Pro Tools system if they're using that for whatever reason. I'm not supposed to say that. Okay, so that's exporting the session. Now we can also use this publish tool here if we're happy with just working in Hindenburg and we don't want to exchange our sessions. What we do want to do is we want to take this session now, bounce it to 2 tracks, and then send it off to somewhere. Typically, if you're working at a radio station, you will have an FTP. So you could have an FTP upload that so you deliver your segment to an FTP at the radio station. But in this day and age, you might also have a number of different places that you want to deliver your segment to. So you could be delivering it as a podcast. It could be, I don't know, using Libsyn as a podcast host. Or you could be working with a system like Wide Orbits, then you want to upload there. Or you want to sell your segments and you'll have an account with PRX. There's a number of different export situations. And in Hindenburg, you can actually set up numerous accounts all at once. Now, one thing to keep in mind is, if I'm doing a radio piece, I want that to be a specific file. I don't want to use the same settings for my radio pieces I want to use for my podcast. My radio piece, I want that to be a WAV format, so it's not compressed in any way. And I want to export that at -24 LUFS. If I was in the States, at least. If I was in Europe, I would want it to be -23, or in Australia. But let's just stick to -24 for the second. So this is what I want for my radio station. My podcast, on the other hand, I want that to be, let's say, an M4A file, and I want that to be uploaded at -16 LUFS. This -16 is a loudness level that is commonly used for podcasts. Depending on who you're working with, if you are doing something for the BBC, -18. If you're doing something for Audible, then use -14. But in general, podcasts are -16. Now, the whole point of this is, I now want to take this piece of audio that I have over here, I've mixed, and I want that to go out to 2 different locations. So, and at 2 different levels and at 2 different file formats. And here I can do all that in one go. So all I need to do once I've set it all up is say, well, this radio piece here, I want that to be for my radio and my podcast, just say publish. And it's going to create the files needed, upload them to the different destinations, and set the different levels. It's a really, really simple tool to use. It's going to save you a huge amount of time if you have this kind of setup where you're doing both archiving, podcasting, that kind of thing. I saw there was a sign there. Does that mean that we're running out of time, or should we go to the Q&A 30? Is that a good thing?
It just means we have 30 minutes left, Nick.
That's a long time. But the thing is, I hope that someone's got some really clever questions about this broadcast features, because I think we actually, well, we could talk about all kinds of features. I think with the very specific broadcast features, these are kind of things, and I was hoping for some more questions about that. No, we've covered the things that we wanted to talk about. So how about we just jump directly into the Q&A, or maybe you have something there, Chuck.
Let's see, Saba. Let's ask Saba directly. Saba, do you have questions that you would like to ask? Specific questions that we can actually help you directly with today. And Dirk, I know that it looks like you're joining us through a call here, but if you're able to send us a chat or a text message, definitely queue up your question as well. I'd love to hear from you. Oh, so Saba doesn't have any questions. Yes, I think Saba's just enjoying the
Just enjoying the ride.
enjoying the call today. Nick, you're talking about loudness-based auto level a little bit earlier today. Let's touch upon that just a little bit more.
Okay.
What is auto level? Like, what is loudness based?
Well, we could start somewhere else. We can say, what is loudness?
Sure.
Okay. So let's start with what loudness is. Let's just drag in some audio here. Okay, I'm just going to set the levels as they were intended without us touching them. Now, the way that we're used to looking at audio is that we have a meter like this one down here, which is called a Ppm meter. And this meter looks like this. It measures how loud the audio is. Now it does this based on the peaks of the audio. So how far will the peaks be electronically? So this tells us something about how loud this is in dB. Okay, which is fine. This is the way that we've been measuring sound for ages. Let's take another piece of audio. I can show you what the problem is. Just needs to convert that. For some reason, it takes longer to convert while I'm doing the webinar. I'm sure there's a reason for that. So here's a different piece of audio. We also have peak levels here. You can see them down here. But as we already can see on the audio, it's two very different pieces of audio. This is very dynamic. It's very loud up here and then it goes down. It's very low and it goes up here and it's loud and it goes down again. So this is a dynamic piece of audio. This, on the other hand, basically is just got the same levels all the way through, which is fine. So we could now look at the levels here and set them both to -6 on this Ppm meter. So that's basically -6, and let's take the peak level here. Maybe a little bit louder. Okay, so they're both peaking at -6. This is the way that we've traditionally been working with audio. We're talking about peak levels. We keep telling people you can't peak louder than a certain level. The problem with that is that if I play these two pieces of music now side by side, I hope you can hear that the pop music is perceived as way, way louder than the classical music, which is a bit of a problem. Not necessarily with radio, because we don't usually have the problem that we're playing pop music and classical music side by side. But if you imagine this was a movie and you had your explosions and someone was talking down here and another explosion up here, and in comes the commercials, then you suddenly can start seeing what the problem is with doing levels this way. So you'll be going from someone speaking softly down here, and suddenly the commercials come on, and you'll be jumping out of your seat because the commercials sound way louder. Something like this. Now, that has been a problem for television for years and years and years, and they didn't really know what to do about it, because if you just tell people to deliver their material at a certain peak level, this is the problem that you're going to have. So it favors the compressed audio. So what they did was they came up with a different way of measuring audio, which is called loudness. And a loudness meter looks something like this. Hands up, we making our whole joint short circuit. Hands high, touch the sky, get 'em up. Now, compared to the meter that we had down here, where we're just looking at your peak levels, a loudness meter gives us, well, basically 8 different readouts, which is terribly clever if you're a sound engineer and terribly confusing if you're not. But the clever thing about it is that what it's doing is it's measuring what the sound sounds like. So it's going to give me a number, basically this number here. And if these numbers are the same, I'm just going to have the system set the levels correctly now. So we can see now we've got a short-term time, which is -22. And if we do the same over here, well, in the short term, it's actually not going to be, but in the long term, and again, loudness is measured over time. It's quite complicated, but over time, these 2 pieces of audio will be perceived as equally loud. I hope this is making sense. It's just a very different way of measuring it. So it's, when we now play these 2 pieces of audio side by side, we're suddenly now favoring the classical music or the dynamic audio. So it gets to have more volume. So the peaks now, if we look down here at the peaks, get to be louder than the peaks here on the pop music. Actually, it gets to be a lot louder. In this case, they were 60 dB louder, which is a lot. So loudness is a way of measuring this in the same way that our ears are measuring sounds. So we can set things side by side. And this is really what sound engineers have been doing forever. You set a baseline of this is the levels you want to use, and then you start mixing using your ears. Again, if we're all sound engineers and had the time to do this, that would be great, but we're not. We're in a hurry. So what Hindenburg is doing is basically measuring everything according to loudness. So we can take some more audio here. Take that one. Again, it will convert it to a WAV file and analyze it and set the level. So different levels all over, but they will be perceived as equally loud. Obviously, you can do this by hand. You can always change the levels if you want to, but just this one simple thing, if you're at a radio station specifically, spending time figuring out, oh, does this one go up here? Does it go down here? Because in any other system, you're not going to get any help whatsoever. You're going to be on your own with those levels, and you're going to have to figure out, should this be -4, -6? And here you can just, there you go, snap to the correct level. It's really easy to use. So it's, it makes everything easier to work with, and is really, really fast to work with as well.
Especially in a production environment where you have not just, you know, a few clips, we're talking a gaggle of clips to work with.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously this works for narration as well, or your interview. And actually, on top of everything else, if we now imported some narration, let's just try to do that. We actually analyze this and figure out that this is narration and not music. So we actually set this a little bit louder than the music. Now the reason for that is not so you can mix it on top of one another like this.
Simone and Kipsky have been creating crazy sounds.
Because obviously the music is still too loud. But when you are mixing, you want your narration to be slightly more dominant in your mix. So that's why we actually set the narration slightly louder. And if you wanted to do a mix, let's do one. Okay, so we want to do a mix right now. So we want the narration to end here and the singing to begin here. So what I can do is just select this area or any specific area and just drag it down. So this is what we call a duck. So we're going to duck the music down underneath here.
Simone and Kipski have been creating crazy sounds together since they were kids in the city of Utrecht.
And there you have it. They have a nice balanced mix. And really all I've done is just place the narration where I wanted it and just give it a little duck. And it's small things like that that make it really, really fast to work with and efficient. Any other questions?
Doesn't look like we have any questions, Nick. Looks like you've done a really good job of explaining everything just crystal clear, so everyone's
crystal clear or really, really confusing. So
no, not at all. So since we've got some time left, Nick, why don't we do this? Why don't we kind of go through the entire process from start to end of everything that we did today? Kind of a recap. Is that possible? We can start with importing from Pro Tools, and we can apply a voice profiler, kind of demonstrate some of the Fast Road Live.
Try to do that. Okay, so let's start by opening a Pro Tools session. So what we did was we went in and found our Pro Tools session, made sure that we're looking for Pro Tools files, like so, and just hit open.
And this is a show about music and people who really who like music.
Oh dear God! So this is apparently a show. So what we could do now,
I'm Kate, and this is a show about music.
We could then go in, and if we had a profile for Kate, we could just then go in and apply that. I don't even have a female one. Oh yeah, we said we've got Mary. We can use Mary.
I'm Kate, and this is a show about music.
Let's put you in the middle, Kate.
I'm Kate, and this is a show about music and people who really who like music.
Okay, so that's how we imported a Pro Tools session and applied a voice profile. If we wanted to adjust the length of this for some reason, as remember we were using time stretch like so, we can actually apply that to a number of clips all at the same time. So if we wanted to adjust the length of all these clips, I could just do that. So that was time stretch as well. What I was doing was we can't do the insert special because that doesn't really make any sense here. And then we were talking about, then we could save the session again once we were finished here. Now we also did the faster than live. Doesn't really make sense, but that's, hopefully you remember, that's where we had different clips and we were just adding that to our newsreel. You set me up for this one, chap. I'm not using any of these tools here. So if you want to save it again as a different format than the Hindenburg format, you could save it as a Hindenburg session, but also as an AES31 for WaveLab and an AAF for Pro Tools. And if we wanted to publish it, we could publish to different destinations. So again, this will come out with different files and different levels depending on how we've set it up in our destination. That was a really fast recap.
It was a very fast recap, but honestly, I mean, that's what it comes down to, though, right? That's what the process comes down to in Hindenburg. And that's kind of the point. I mean, I think when you say it's a really fast recap, I think we sell ourselves short by saying that. I think one of Hindenburg's greatest features is that it is just that simple. So,
well, we tried to make it look simple.
Yeah,
really not. It's quite complicated.
All right. Well, if there aren't any questions coming through, I think we can call it a day for the broadcaster live training. And if you do have questions, you can always contact us directly at hindenburg.com/support, and we can always answer your questions there. But outside of that, guys, definitely thank you very much for taking the time to spend some time with us here today. Okay.
Okay.
All right. You're welcome, guys. You're welcome. Okay, take care.
Take care. Bye now.